Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Bad Hair Day Nicodemus. And together, we are the Minimalists.
What's up, Frizzy?
Look, I know my hair is frizzy. You don't have to tell me in the comments, okay?
You know that means you're just going to get 10 times.
Right, exactly.
Well, those delicious voices you hear with us. We got Malabama in the studio.
Hi, everybody.
We got TK Coleman here.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Coming up today on this free public minimal episode, we're joined by a board-certified clinical psychologist, and we're talking to a listener about heartbreak and letting go of your ex. Plus, we have an outstanding lightning round segment, a live stream question, and a listener tip for you. You can check out the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 383, where we answer 4 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free because, say it with me, y'all, advertisements suck. Let's start with our callers. If you have a question for our show, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice memo for that beautiful voice memo quality right from your phone. Just send it to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Harper.
Hi, my name is Harper, and I had a question about letting go of your ex when you have done that intellectually and you're trying to do it emotionally, or you mostly have, but physically, like in your body, like your body hasn't let go. I still have almost like trauma dreams about my ex. Like she still has apparently some power over me, or my nervous system still thinks so. Anyway, like I won't think about her for weeks or months at a time, but then we'll have dreams about this person and have to wake up and actively think about letting go. What do you do when your body sometimes physically won't let go of a person?
Joining us in the studio right now to help us answer this question and several other questions is Dr. Courtney Warren. She's the author of this new book, Letting Go of Your Ex. It's a book about healing the pain of a breakup and also overcoming love addiction. Dr. Warren, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, we want to get into a pretty difficult topic to discuss here with Harper specifically. He's talking about heartbreak and the inability to sort of let go. And it sounds to me like there's some healing that needs to happen here. And before we dive into the question itself, I thought your book was really instructive for his question in particular. I'm reading here from page 89 of Letting Go of Your Ex, where you talk about the faulty beliefs about your ex. And I'm obviously not going to read the whole section here, but the first faulty belief is, my ex is the best.
My ex is the best. They complete me. They're this magical human because when you're with them, it feels amazing. If anyone out there has ever been in love, you know that feeling I'm talking about. It's euphoric. It's a natural high. You meet them, you're with them, and you feel wonderful. And because of that, you will create a whole belief system based essentially in lies because you're going to idealize them over almost any other human.
Ooh. And what happens is that ideal version of them is sort of this 2D cutout, this nostalgic cutout. You look at them in the rear view, and of course they're perfect, which is actually the next faulty belief. My ex is perfect and perfect for me.
Perfect for me. Because I've put them on this pedestal. I feel amazing when I'm with them. I think about them all the time. I crave them. I want to be around them. I'm planning for our next rendezvous. It's this wonderful, magical fantasy experience. But as long as we're together, I am going to be happy.
Yes.
I am going to have meaning. I am going to be important. My life is going to work out. And so they must be perfect. They are the perfect specimen. I have found the perfect specimen for me.
And that pivots perfectly into the faulty belief number 3, my ex's choices reflect my value.
And that's such a tough one after you break up. Because at some level, as we put them on a pedestal and we idealize them and we feel amazing, we think that their comments, thoughts, opinions are valid, are true, are somehow reflective of you and who you are and what you should be and what should matter to you. And so if they don't like something you're wearing, something you say, something you like, your way of being in the world, it feels like a personal attack. It feels like somehow you are diminished.
And I guess maybe the opposite might be true, where you look at, let's say you break up with someone and you look at their partner and you're like, oh, I'm way better looking than that partner. Like I saw someone, some girl tweet, she was like, oh, it doesn't matter that my boyfriend broke up with me. His new girlfriend is way uglier than me. And then someone retweeted and was like, sounds like you learned a valuable lesson about looks.
That's a good point though, because if you make a list of all the things your ex criticizes you for, someone else might love you for those very same qualities, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what else is really fascinating, per your example? Sometimes you look at your own friends, people you love, and people they are dating, and they are giddy and gushing and, oh, this person's amazing. And you're looking at their mate going, are you sure? Like, I'm not seeing what you're seeing here. Like, they might be fine, but... Yeah. And you can see it. You see their deception. We see deception, self-deception in other people way more easily than we see it in ourselves. And that's really a lot of the journey of understanding who you are over the course of life.
Yeah. And we don't always understand the value that we bring perfectly either. Derek Sivers was talking about this with like a music experiment where a number of different artists had to cite, what's your best song? And when they put a list of their best songs and then they talked to the fans didn't even like the artist's selection for best work. But the fans were like, oh, this changed my life, about things that the artists themselves didn't think were that good. And so sometimes we think, oh, I'm valued in this relationship because of this attribute I'm proud of about myself. And the other person's like, no, I don't care about that. Like the looks. I don't care about that. I care about you're funny. So while you're busy gloating over the fact that my new significant other is worse looking than you, I'm rejoicing in the fact that they're funny because that's what I always valued.
Yeah. I'm going to get into a couple more faulty beliefs here. This one, I think, is one of the most dangerous because we believe it to be true. It's faulty belief number 4. My ex will change or I can change them. And so there is a line in our first book, Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life, that Ryan and I wrote way back in 2011. You can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. Quite often what we do is someone's in our life and I will love you conditionally. If you just change these 7 things about yourself, oh, you'd be the perfect partner, right? And of course, if I were to somehow convince you, manipulate you, persuade you to change 6 of those, I'm going to roast over the 7th. Or even worse, I get you to change all 7. What do they say? A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. That you don't actually change them by changing the sort of surface ornaments in a way. And so can you expand a bit on this idea of I'm going to change you?
So often when you're going through a breakup, there's this churning phase. There's this phase where you're not sure if you should stay or go. You really love someone profoundly. You've built a life with them, but it's not working, right? And so you're on the brink of leaving. And after you actually break up, there is this questioning and self-doubt of, well, maybe I can change them. I can change their mind. I can get them back. I can fix that. I can change myself, or I can make them love me again. I can make them want me again. And it becomes this hyperfixation on a fantasy, again, on something that isn't really real, because you can't change someone else. The only person you can change is looking right back at you in the mirror.
That's right.
That's it.
We'll do one more false belief here, faulty belief. It's the 6th one here. I need my ex to be complete. Now, in order for me to be complete, I need that person to complete me. And this is insidious. Before we started recording, we were talking about how most great pop songs, love songs are about this sort of misunderstanding of love. You complete me. I need you. I'm lost without you. And all of this great music, while it sounds really good, and in fact, we're going to listen to some really good music later during the added value segment on the podcast. But it's this belief that, having you, having this in this idealized version of us is going to make me complete. Mm-hmm. And quite often what happens is we lose ourselves in that. And I think this ties back closely to Harper's question here. When he called in, he said, I'm having these trauma dreams. Mm-hmm. And it's almost as though part of that is like, I'm feeling this incompleteness. Mm-hmm. And perhaps that partner is going to not just heal me, help me heal, but they're also going to complete me. It's going to make my life not just better, but complete.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely hear the trauma in the nightmares that Harper was talking about. And I think so much of the recovery after a breakup, of letting go of an ex after a bad breakup, is re-finding yourself. Your identity, your meaning, your values. Given that this person who you probably built a life with at some level is no longer there, now what? What do you bring to the table? Who are you? What do you care about? And it's really common to have lingering symptoms after a breakup, much like he has, where you intellectually know it's over. I know it's over. We're broken up. I've radically tried to accept this. But now I still have symptoms. I still feel lost. I still cry. I still get triggered when I walk by that coffee shop we used to go to, or I see a picture, or our mutual friend says, I saw so-and-so, your ex, last week. And so they still have some hook in you. And it feels very frustrating for a lot of people because they intellectually don't want it. You'll even hear people say, I don't even like them anymore. I don't even know why I'm thinking about them anymore. Why do I care? And so part of that journey for him, which it sounds like he's doing a pretty good job of, is continuing on your own path to creating your best life today. And that means adding in new social supports. It means cutting off contact with your ex as much as you can. He's having a little contact in his own mind, much to his own dismay through those dreams. And there are ways that we can strategically help him with that as psychologists or as mental health professionals. But so much of it is refinding your own value, refinding your own voice, remembering that this breakup doesn't break you. It doesn't actually have anything to do with your value if someone else doesn't want to be with you anymore. You have exactly the same value as a single person than you did when you were with your ex.
Yeah.
And that's something a lot of people forget.
So good. There's a story of two guys sitting in a coffee shop. This beautiful woman walks in and one of the guys says, man, she's gorgeous. I'm going to make my move. I'm going to ask her if I can buy her a cup of coffee. She sees him coming and she says, I'm not interested. He returns to his seat and his buddy says, how did it go? And he says, she wasn't that beautiful anyway. And then his friend says, let me guess, she magically became ugly the moment she rejected you. Letting go does not mean ceasing to be attracted to your beautiful qualities. Letting go does not mean, you were funny and now I'm convinced that you're no longer funny. People continue to be the same talented, charming, beautiful, inspiring people they always were, even when we part ways. And letting go is really about saying, I'm committed to creating my future in a way that doesn't involve the two of us playing the same roles that defined our past. It doesn't mean that someone has power over you if you still find them attractive in certain ways. So if you look at an old picture and you say, wow, she's still beautiful. If you go to sleep at night and you have a dream about her, that doesn't mean she has power over you. That means she's compelling, she's inspiring, she's beautiful, and you're a reasonable person for ever being attracted to her in the first place. And letting go means I can receive that, I can allow space for that, and I can still remain committed to doing what is healthy for me in spite of the discomfort of having those feelings sometimes.
It sounds to me like what you're talking about here with letting go, part of it is the healing process as well. It's healing is sort of the gateway to letting go, but of course we can't do healing, right? I remember when Ryan broke his back a few years ago, he had to sit up in the hospital for a while and then in bed for a while. He couldn't do the healing. You got into a car accident a few years ago, or last year, actually.
It's not even been a year.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. And you had to heal from that. And there wasn't something that you could really do to heal. Now, you can strengthen yourself after the fact, but the healing involves actually letting go of the doing. And so quite often, what I would say to someone like Harper is letting go of this person just requires more healing to take place. And the only way you can heal is putting yourself in the right environment for a protracted period of time. And it sounds like you're already getting there. Ryan, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round where we answer your questions from TikTok.
Yes, indeed. Now, you can follow The Minimalists on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Minimalists. Now, during the lightning round, we each have 60 seconds to answer your questions with a short, shareable, less than 140-character response. We put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes over at theminimalists.com/podcast, so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like. Looks like we have a question here from Sylvia.
I think people who need you to communicate your expectations don't know what they're doing in a relationship and will ultimately disappoint you. How can you make yourself happy instead of expecting your partner to?
Well,
that took a turn.
Let's throw 60 seconds on the clock for Ryan and allow him to dissect this.
Oh, man. Here's my pithy answer. No one can make you happy. They can only enhance the joy that exists inside you.
Amen.
And I had an ex one time that I broke up with, and I constantly looked back as, I would have been happier if I would have had them in my life. I should have done better. I was completed back then, and man, I certainly feel incomplete now. But what I realized was that incompleteness is not her fault. It's my fault. And why would I ever give that power to someone, to have that domain over me, to make me happy or not? So don't give that power to someone else. Be complete on your own. And then anyone else that enters your life, it'd be great if they could enhance it.
We were talking with Courtney on the private podcast, Ryan, exactly about what you're saying. But the thing that's fascinating is all these love songs that sort of talk about, or movies, you complete me, right? But the truth is, you incomplete me. But it's not even you that incompletes me. It's my need of you to complete me that paradoxically incompletes me. Mm-hmm. And so it's beautiful. I love what you said here. No one can make you happy. They can only enhance the joy that exists inside you. So you can't pursue joy through someone else, through a relationship, but you can find someone who amplifies that joy that's inside you. We have 60 seconds on the clock for my good friend, TK Coleman.
Communication is not a substitute for chemistry. No matter who you are and how much the other person loves you, there will always be some things that need to be told. And you're setting yourself up for a life of continual disappointment and resentment if you demand telepathic knowledge from your partner. With that being said, however, no matter how much you communicate, you will not enjoy that relationship unless you are with someone that is committed to learning about you, making themselves a student of your heart, and delighting in the ways that they can surprise you, in the ways that they can make you excited without you having to spell it out and prescribe it for them. So communication matters, but only when it's based on a foundation of real energetic compatibility. There's something in you that creates a spark in me. There's something in me that creates a spark in you. And once we have a dance that's more fundamental than the words, then we can bring in the words and the words can amplify what we have. But without that dance, without that spark, without that fire, our words won't get us there.
I love what TK is saying here. Ryan, he seems to be describing in our last book, Love People Use Things, we talk about how every relationship, especially intimate relationships, but any relationship really is a three-legged table, or it's like a tripod. That tripod that camera's on over there, it requires all three legs. And if you take one leg away from that tripod, what happens? It tips over, right? And the three legs for any relationship, compatibility, which you talked about, chemistry, which is important, and love. In chemistry, you know right away. You have some sort of chemistry with someone. Like the three of us have a particular chemistry on this podcast. Or when you have sexual attraction to someone, there is a particular energy or chemistry you feel there. And that's easy to notice. It's really difficult to sustain. In fact, on the private podcast, I do want to talk about some ways to sustain it and also talk about how we can take cheating off the table in a relationship as well. And so we'll talk about that. But the other two legs, love, in some respects, that is the easiest and the most difficult. We mistake love. We say attachment is love. We say clinging is love. We say needing is love. We say conditions are love. But of course, that isn't love. To love someone is to see them for who they are without trying to change them, manipulate them, convince them, persuade them, right? And if you can do that, it's a type of acceptance in a way. And so now you have two legs. But the third leg, which we often forsake, and we try to make work, is compatibility. And if we're not compatible with someone, it doesn't matter how much I love you. It doesn't matter how much chemistry we have together. Oh, the energy is just there. But if we are not compatible, and I've been in relationships, and most of my exes at this point, it wasn't because we didn't have chemistry. We did. It wasn't because we didn't have love. We did. It's because we simply weren't compatible. And what happens is when you realize that, you cling tighter to the relationship. And when you cling tight to that relationship, what happens? You get dragged in the direction of chemistry and of love, so-called love. But that isn't love at all. Real love has a willingness to let go if there isn't a compatibility there. One other note on that. Sometimes you're compatible for a season. And that compatibility ends because your values change, your beliefs change, their values change, their beliefs change, their preferences change. And that's okay. Just because you were compatible a year ago or 10 years ago doesn't mean you're going to be compatible today or tomorrow.
It's crazy how when you have two of those things, how hard it is to let go. Because you're like 66% there. And to let go of that 66%, it's difficult.
Well, back in school, 66% was a D minus. So that's what you'll get out of that. You'll get a D minus relationship. It's not enough to fail, but it's almost there.
How dare you share my high school grades?
Give me 60 seconds, Professor Sean. Love is not tethered to expectations. Ryan and I often talk about how standards are greater than expectations. An expectation means, hey, I expect you to do this. I expect you to do this. I expect you to complete me. I expect you to make this relationship better. I expect you to do these things in this sequence, and then we will be happy. Here are my expectations. Well, that's never going to make you happy because no one is ever going to fulfill all your expectations. And quite often, you're going to have expectations that don't align with their expectations. But what can you have? You can have high standards for yourself. Here's how I behave in the relationship. If someone yells at me, I'm not going to yell back at you. That's my standard. I can't expect you not to yell at me, but I can have the standard where I'm not going to yell back. I'm not going to retaliate. And so love is not tethered to your expectations, but it's easier to see when you have high standards. We're going to check in with our Patreon live stream here in a moment, but first, real quick for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the Minimalists. It's the final Sunday Symposium. Well, for now, at least. It's been a really fun experiment. We did 4 sold-out events last year. Sunday Symposium in Los Angeles. Small groups, the smallest events that we've done in many, many years. 200 seats at Dynasty Typewriter. It's the theater there in downtown Los Angeles. SundaySymposium.com is where you can find tickets, and I think there are maybe a dozen or so tickets left at this point by the time this episode comes out. So SundaySymposium.com. What do y'all enjoy about these events?
Oh, I love the intimacy of it, man. It's funny you said the smaller crowd that we haven't done in a while. I mean, 200 people, man. I mean, like, I remember when it was 2, let alone 200. But I like those intimate events because I feel like there's just more connection that we can bring and that we can have with one another.
Yeah. What about you, TK?
Yeah, there's just a real magic that happens when you bring people together in the same physical space. You know, it can be easy to dehumanize ourselves by treating the essence of our humanity as if it's primarily mental or spiritual. Hey, I can get everything that I need from Ryan over the internet or over the phone, but we are embodied beings. Our bodies matter. Our physical presence matter. Our ability to shake a hand, to make eye contact, those sorts of things matter. And there's a certain kind of synergy that is created when you have the energy of bodies present in a room, united under a common interest to connect. And that's what I love about it. It's the things that we can't predict, the things that we can't promise, because they're things that we co-create together when we come together.
We got a nice little surprise at this one as well. It is March 26th, SundaySymposium.com. Just a few tickets left over there. Let's check back in with the Patreon live stream. Alabama, what do you got for us?
Here's a question from Melanie. I recently broke off a 3-year relationship. In our last year together, he took leave from his job to work on his mental health. But after 8 months of trying to support him, I could no longer continue being his therapist and mother instead of his partner. I truly care for him and I want him to heal. But how long do you wait before you move on?
Yeah, 17 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, 4 hours, 16 minutes.
23 seconds.
And that's the problem with prescriptions here, right? Is like, it may actually take that long. In fact, they did this survey, how long it takes to move on from an ex. And on average, it's somewhere around 17 months. And that's why I was joking with that number. But that doesn't mean that, I'd simply wait 17 months and that's how I can move on. But also, while you're mired in their discontent, it is also making you discontent. Because that discontentment is contagious. And what we don't realize is that you spend enough time around a joyous person, it seems to rub off on you. But if you spend enough time around a miserable person, it will often rub off on you. Even if you are predisposed to joy and pleasantries over a long enough timeline, this is actually, this discontentment becomes a prison. And it's true, in fact, that like if I were to put Ryan in a prison, an actual prison here in California, he's going to, over a period of time, maybe 17 months, he's going to start acting the way the other prisoners act in that prison, right? So we become imprisoned by our relationships. We become imprisoned by our own expectations of the other person. Yes, you want this man to heal, and totally respect that.
Yeah.
But you can't force healing onto someone either. You can, as Ryan has illuminated, you can support them. But sometimes your level of support, you might confuse support with what you're actually doing, which can be, it can be incentivizing them to continue. And so you become an enabler of this behavior that you're actually hoping that they can heal from.
Yeah, they start to get like addicted to the sympathy that you're giving them. Man, it's possible to love and support someone from a distance. So it doesn't mean that you have to stop talking to them altogether. I think about that cliche of time heals all wounds. And I'll tell you, I got divorced at 22. And I remember like the first week or 2 weeks that we were split up, I had a friend tell me who went through the divorce process. He said, "Hey man, I know how you feel right now. It feels like the world is coming down. You look at other people and you ask yourself, how could they be happy? And you feel like you're never going to be happy again." He said, "But I promise you," he's like, "in 1 year, you're going to feel better." And he was exactly right. That is how I felt. I felt depressed. See people smiling. What are they so happy about? The world's terrible. Like I had this angst and this stress and anxiety in me. And I'll tell you, at about the 1 year mark, it started to fade a little bit. And I wish I would have really taken that in when he told me that, because when he told me that, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, right, dude. Like, okay, I'm depressed, but this is the worst advice I've ever been given because it doesn't mean anything to me. But a year later, I'm really, I really did start feeling better. So I wish I would have taken that to heart. So, as far as like when to move on, you're going to know when it's time to move on. There is no prescription for it. There's no exact time frame of when to move on.
Because you can't sit down with a pro and con list.
Yeah.
Here are the 7 reasons I should stay in the relationship, and here are the 7 that I should leave, right? Because the truth is that some of these things are intangible, or they weigh so much more. I tried to do this with place? Where do I want to live, right? And for me, Southern California, there's a whole lot to recommend not living in Southern California.
Sure.
The high taxes, the traffic, I can name a bunch of things, right? But I so outweigh the weather, but I also weigh the way that it makes me feel.
Exactly. Like when you're ready to move on, your heart will tell you it's time to move on.
TK, you want a last word here for Melanie?
Yeah, I think the best kinds of friends and partners are the ones who are capable of keeping up with your own evolution. You're doing what's healthy for you, and your life organically intersects with all of the people who are compatible with you. If you have to say, well, in order to keep you around in my life, I got to be unhealthy. I got to be depressed. Well, that's not only bad for you in a self-interested sense, but it's also bad for the other person as well. This is why I love your decision to stop playing the role of therapist. I commend you for that, because that's not just a drain on you. But if you're not a therapist, then that means you're playing a role in his life that you're not qualified to play, and you're doing harm to both of you. Or if you are a therapist and you are qualified to play that role, but you really don't want to be there, then that means you're going to be doing this resentfully. So it not only drains you, but it also puts him in a position where he needs to be elsewhere, and he's spending his time getting help from someone who resents him for the help or who simply isn't qualified to provide it. So I commend you for that. And what I would say is moving on doesn't have to mean, hey, look, I'm just going to find someone else to date and call it quits forever for us and close out that possibility. Moving on can simply mean I'm going to make sure I treat my health as something that doesn't have as a prerequisite you being completely whole. I'm going to be healthy now. And if you can meet up with me sometime in the future, then so be it. But in the meantime, I'm not going to treat your health as a prerequisite for mine.
That's an astute point, because quite often the best way to ruin a relationship is to expect the other person to play every role in your life. I need you to be my lover, my partner, my therapist, my mommy, my business partner. And all of a sudden, you have all of these different expectations, and it ruins the relationship. Why? Because it sucks the chemistry out of it, right? And it makes you less likely to even be compatible with that person. So, Melanie, it is not your duty to fix anyone else, especially your partner. You can support that person. You can be there as they heal, but it's not your duty to be there. And if you do decide to move on past this relationship, that also doesn't mean this relationship was a failure. The failure would be staying in a relationship that is no longer serving you. And by the way, if that relationship's no longer serving you, it's difficult for you to be of service to the relationship. Malabama, what else you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, this is Donna Jensen from Virginia Beach. One way I found to get rid of my paper crafting supplies was to donate them to preschools, elementary schools, and middle and high school art departments. Due to limited budgets, teachers must buy most of their own supplies for arts and crafts, so they were thrilled to receive my vintage supplies. Some schools may even write you a receipt for a charitable contribution, so you can at least lower your taxes a bit, even though you won't realize the money that you put into the supplies to begin with.
All right, that's our minimal episode for today. We'll see you on Patreon for the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 383, which includes answers to a bunch more questions like, what's the difference between clinging to someone versus having a sentimental attachment to them? And how do I deal with resentment in my relationship? Plus, we got a million more questions for Dr. Warren and the Minimalists. Also, this week, we have a private minimalist home tour. We take a peek inside our talented filmmaker, Jordan No More's home. We're calling it Clutter No More.
Very good.
We also have an outstanding added value segment for you, some talkaboutables, and much, much, much more of less. If you want to hear all that, check out the Minimalist Private Podcast at patreon.com/theminimalists, or click the link in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You'll also gain access to all of our podcast archives, all the way back to episode 001. And if you're still on the fence, here's a testimonial from one of our lovely Patreon supporters. Cheryl says, I am so grateful that I found the Minimalist Private Podcast. I never thought of myself as a hoarder, but I guess I am. My home is a small warehouse full of broken dreams. I've also come to realize that my obsession with collecting things comes from the need for self-actualization. Thanks to you, I now know that I can let go. I edited that a little bit to make it a little bit shorter, but what a beautiful comment from Cheryl. Thank you so much for your support. Understanding that you can let go, I think it starts here. And that understanding is so much more powerful than 17 ways to declutter your closet. And that's what we really hope to provide with the Minimalists private podcast. Big thanks to our guest today, Dr. Courtney Warren, for joining us. You can check out her new book. It's called Letting Go of Your Ex. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. And if you leave here today with just one message, let it be this. Love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.